Buongiorno y buenos días. Bienvenidos todos. Mi nombre es Daniel O'Connor. Soy el jefe académico y chef ejecutivo de la Escuela de Gastronomía. Como español no es mi primera lengua, voy a transitar entre English, please. Maybe a little bit of Spanglish, but I hope we can communicate effectively. The School of Gastronomia is going to be celebrating its 8th anniversary this July, and I can't be prouder, I can't be happier for our accomplishments, for the hundreds of students that have gone through our program and are currently enrolled, as the school has had a profound impact on the gastronomic culture of Honduras, and it continues to have a strong influence on how people will perceive Honduras and its gastronomic culture. My first visit to Honduras was in 1984. I was able to visit the capital city of Tegucigalpa, and then we took literally a road trip. We went from Tegucigalpa to Copan, Copan to Tela to La Ceiba, and then in La Ceiba we jumped on a small DC-3 and we flew to the island of Roatan. And the Roatan that I visited for the very first time in 1984 is uniquely distinct and different than the Roatan that we know today. In those days there was no airport building. There wasn't even a runway per se. The runway was a dirt-packed landing strip, and the airport office was literally a wooden shack that was adjacent to the runway. But I will tell you that from that very first visit, from those very first contacts with Honduras, with the different ecosystems, the topographies, and certainly the experiences of the Bay Islands and the virgin ecosystems that I was introduced to on this first visit was profound. And the changes in Honduras, the evolution in Honduras, the technology, the dramatic increases in the population and the impact that a cruise ship terminal might have on an island destination, all of those things are profound, and it makes me think, it makes me wonder, and to a certain degree, it makes me a little bit concerned about what's happening to this beautiful and extraordinary country. One of the first impressions I have of Honduras was, one was how clean it was. And the second, when we think in terms of purity, how pure it was. And pure from the perspective of a cook, of a chef, might be a little bit different. The lens that I see things through, or I saw things through at that time, and they continue to look and evaluate, might be a little bit different than other careers or other types of professions. But for me, the simplicity of Honduras in those days, in those first contacts, first visits, was the beauty and simplicity of the ingredients. It was how you didn't see the sign pollution and the influences of the franchises and the neon signs and the snack foods and processed foods. What was impactful for me were a couple things that really stuck out. First was that when you went to a side stand, you're driving on the road and you stopped at the side of the road and you wanted to get a drink, the drink was typically served in a little plastic bag with a straw, and the Cokes and the bottled soft drink sodas were still in glass. So the proprietors, the vendors, not to lose the value of the empaque of the glass, used to pass the product into a little plastic bag with a straw. That was unique, that was kind of funny and funky, but the beauty was also in that so many things were sold by the road were natural, fresh authentic ingredients, the pineapples, the bananas, the roasted corn, the chicharrones, all of these wonderful things, they were in their simplest forms, and they were sold. Cash was king. In those days, there were no real acceptance of tarjetas. There were no cell phones. There was no sense of instant gratification. You had to work for it and learn to appreciate, and you couldn't Google it, or you couldn't look at TripAdvisor, and you couldn't look online for references. These experiences that one would have were typically generated from word of mouth, 1 or 2 degrees of separation, somebody you knew or somebody you knew who knew someone who said they went to Roatan and had one of the best diving experiences of their lives in the mid 1980s. How wonderful it was to go diving and to go swimming and to go fishing and to be able to have the little dive resort prepare the food that the fish that you caught that day, and it was served not only to you but to other guests at the resort. And you know, it's those types of things that at the time we took for granted, and now in 2024 we're searching for those authentic experiences one more time, because we have such a profound dependence on convenience and technology and instant gratification. And certainly there's nothing wrong with having technology, there's nothing wrong with having smartphones, but when that smartphone creates a uber dependency on every aspect of your life, you use the phone to set your calendar, and a call cannot go unanswered, and a message has to be replied to within the next 2 or 3 minutes, or there's some form of separation anxiety. I think in many of those cases, the experiences are lost. I teach a number of different classes at the university. 2 of my favorite are on the extremes of the lesson plan. My absolute favorite class is Técnicas Culinarias 1, and that is the very, very first, we're getting some competition here. So that is the very, very first contact that our gastronomy students typically have with a professional kitchen. It creates that imprinting process. We obviously focus on techniques and the introduction of the elements of taste: salty, sweet, sour, acid, umami, and in our part of the world we have a really nice spice or heat component that becomes a big part of how we taste and evaluate our flavors. And the students are very impressionable and naive to a huge extent, and very few of them have experience in professional kitchens, but at the very same time, it's a beautiful time of wonderment and adventure. And one of the things that I have noticed over the years is how quickly the students are, the right word maybe is how quickly they become gullible to what they see, what they read, the power of an influencer, and how that they choose to behave. And you know, I'm a crusader against the dependency of ultra-processed ingredients. University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill has a program where they have done investigations on the dependency of ultra-processed ingredients. 67% of the caloric intake of youths, children and adolescents in North America comes from ultra-processed foods. 82% of the SKUs in the grocery stores are ultra processed foods. And to understand what that impact is, in 1984, that number in a grocery store in Honduras would have been less than 10%. And in 2024, that number is 80%. 80% of the entire inventory of products sold in a grocery store, food, not food, beverage, 82% is now consisting of ultra processed foods. And I find that crazy. And part of that is the multinational corporations and the corporate greed and the ability of these multinational corporations to create food, to re-engineer food to have longer shelf lives, more palatable colors, textures, flavors. And when we talk about ultra-processed foods, we're typically talking about a food that would have a little 12, 14 ingredients, I think is usually that threshold. Once it gets beyond 14 ingredients, you can pretty much classify it as ultra-processed without even understanding those ingredients. But ultra-processed foods would have had that ingredient transformed with the use of chemicals, processed sugars, processed salts, stabilizers, artificial colors, artificial flavors. And the sophistication and the technology used now to transform foods. And why do they do it? They do it because they make them less expensive, cheaper. They have extraordinarily long shelf lives. They're easier to pack, easier to ship. And obviously the end result is a lower cost for the manufacturer and a higher profit motive. In my second favorite class, which is the Organization and Professional Development of Kitchens, we talk at length about ultra-processed foods, and my students have a hard time understanding how is it possible that a simple French fry, simple fried potato from McDonald's has 17 ingredients in there. And you take a simple potato and it's washed, and then it's cut, and then it's dipped in a solution, and that solution has antioxidants, it has sweeteners, it has different types of salts in there, and then it is fried. So that solution sticks to the potato, it is blanched for a very short period of time, usually about 1 minute, then it's blast frozen, it's packaged and shipped around the world, and it's fried in an oil that create vegetable oil. So it's a genetically modified corn oil plus modified soybean oils plus seed oils. But then they add a natural beef, the ingredient says natural beef flavor. They're adding a beef flavor to the cooking oil to impart that flavor into the French fry. And the sugar is dextrose, and the dextrose allows for the rapid caramelization, so you get that uniform color all the way around. So your French fry in Tegucigalpa, and your French fry in Atlanta, and your French fry in Paris, and your French fry in Beijing, all are going to be remarkably similar, if not identical. And that is all part of the ultra processing of foods. We talk in our class about fast foods, fast casual, casual dining, gourmet, and fine dining, and different classifications and the different dependencies. So fast foods You have a high dependency on ultra processed. So these chains, the McDonald's, the Burger Kings, the Wendy's, the KFCs, the pizza chains, all have a high dependency on ultra processed foods, high dependency on technology, and a very high dependency on processes and systems that substitute the need for judgment and evaluation and talent and experience. So if you're a McDonald's franchisee, you're going to have to buy that fryer, that deep fat fryer from McDonald's, and that fryer is made very specifically for that McDonald's French fry, and it has an oil filtration system and all of these other beautiful Mickeys, but at the very same time, it doesn't allow for any discretion from the franchisees, because you have to buy the potato for the French fry from an approved McDonald's distributor, and that product is processed to a very strict and uncompromising specification provided to that distributor by that same McDonald's parent corporation. And that's kind of part of what you would pay for and what you would expect as a franchisee. You're paying for that talent, you're paying for that talent base, you're paying for all of those recipes, but what you're not doing is you're not delivering a healthy, wholesome product to the consumer. And part of the test kitchens, part of the processes that these companies do, the multinationals, the food corporations, the fast food corporations, is they want to create a product that is highly addictive. So the sugars, the salts, the added sugars create a highly addictive product, and we don't even recognize it, but we have these cravings. It's pretty interesting that there is a pizza dough manufactured by Domino's, and that pizza dough has added sugars in there to give the crust that beautiful golden color, but because in the test markets the pizza dough was a little bit sweet because of the added sugars, they actually found a chemical that can mask the sugar. So you'll still get the benefit, you'll still get the beautiful caramelization, but you'll no longer be able to feel, you won't be able to taste the sweetness because there are masking agents. And that's just a small example of a lot of what happens with our foods and our dependency with ultra processed foods. So we go back to, our roles as cooks, as chefs, as instructors, as leaders. And I have a very strong passion for Honduras. Part of my mission has been to help create a gastronomic identity for this country. We have an amazing living test kitchen project, the restaurant Nueve Patrias. It's open to the public Wednesday, Thursday, Fridays, and Saturdays. It's a live kitchen experience for our students. It's staffed by students from different classes. Our wine class participates, our beverage class participates, obviously our restaurant operations class, our fundamentals of service class participates, the Honduras 1, the Honduras 2 classes all participate, and the end result is that we have a restaurant experience. It's a tasting menu, it's 8 or 9 or 10 courses, and it's profoundly Honduran. So we're going the polar opposite of what a fast food restaurant might do, and we're investigating foods and ingredients and techniques. The influences are from the 9 living cultures of Honduras, and we're trying to, one, identify, two, preserve these culinary traditions of the indigenous communities, these native populations. We're also trying to create a sense of understanding, and at the very same time an adaptation to the modern kitchen for some of these typical or traditional dishes that are now being offered in the restaurant. So the restaurant is, the platform for the restaurant, the identity for the restaurant is that we use local ingredients, we use seasonal ingredients. Our ingredients are with an emphasis on organic, but working to create a culture where ingredients are grown, processed, cultivated in sustainable business practices, that it's safe for, or it's beneficial to the environment, as opposed to being a danger or a detriment to the environment. So it's local food, seasonal food, harvested, processed in sustainable manners, favorable pricing, fair pricing. It's a framework of the Slow Food International movement, and it has been adapted specifically for the Honduran experience. So now, possibly for the very first time, international travelers have a chance to see and experience and understand Honduran food in a completely different light. We've been working over the last few weeks with a fruit called matasano, which is a fruit that is it's very close to extinction, and it's going to be a fruit that will be a highlight over the next couple months on our menus. We're using different processes, sweet and salty, and desserts and beverages, and 100% utilization of a fruit that most of my students have never heard of. But when I tell them to ask your grandparents, ask your great uncles and your great aunts if they've ever heard of a fruit called matasano, there will be an immediate transformation in their faces. They will have a smile, and they'll be thinking back to their childhood and to the understanding that this fruit was a base ingredient for much of the sweets and the candies in the post-World War II era. So before we had artificial colors and flavors and sweeteners, it was this type of ingredient like the matasano. So I'm very excited about that. I'm very excited about my chef instructors and my students responding to the challenge and creating these really beautiful experiences with things like matasano. So thank you for your participation in this conference, in this symposium. Thank you for your continued support of the School of Gastronomy, and most of all, thank you for your passion, your intensity, your desire, your discipline, and your perseverance in helping us make the Honduran gastronomic culture a wonderful experience for everybody who chooses to participate. Have a great day. Ciao, ciao, ciao.